As well, a panel of private sector executives and NGO leaders convened to examine the United States shifting approach to foreign assistance. Well, the discussion highlighted emerging priorities and strategies for humanitarian engagement.
Just for clarification purposes, is a non-governmental, non-political organization. We've been around for 25 years. We're currently operating in 12 countries, but we worked in 65 countries since our establishment. And we work in some of the most fragile situations. And I think it was very clear to us even before kind of the recent drop in global funding for humanitarian aid and development that we can't rely on institutional funding. Institutional funding is very important, and it's a lifeline for the sector. But we have to build a very strong base of supporters who understand the need for flexibility and speed for our work. So whenever there is a crisis somewhere in the world, we're very proud ourselves in deploying and being on the ground within 72 hours. The latest, and that includes whether disasters in sort of the most remote parts of the world, places like Vanuatu in the Pacific. There's a famous story about the earthquake in Haiti in 2010, where 250,000 people lost their lives, where our team was on the ground in 32 hours. And if you look at the map between Israel and Haiti, it takes about 32 hours if you leave after 2 minutes. So the flexibility and the speed is very, very important. However, I will say that when we build our relationship with philanthropists, I think something that a lot of people here in the room, I see our friends from World Central Kitchen here, and other organizations, I think what we're seeing more than ever is what we call disaster fatigue.
I need to start by saying we're not a humanitarian assistance organization. We're a for-profit firm that mostly specializes in implementation of longer-term development projects, in addition to management consulting, financial services. However, we have managed to be in the wrong place at the right time many, many dozens of times over our 55-year history. And so we have fallen backwards into providing humanitarian assistance in a lot of different contexts, both man-made disasters as well as natural disasters. And so, when I was reflecting on sort of what lessons we've learned, what's made us effective in these situations operationally is basically three things. The first is our established operational capabilities. We've been in 150 countries over the last 50 years. Many countries we've been in for decades. So we have on-the-ground operational capabilities. We have, similarly, very strong local networks. A lot of local staff, a lot of local partners, a lot of local contexts, local operating knowledge. And then the third thing is, we have contracts with lots of different governments, with the World Bank, with a lot of different entities that when a crisis strikes, we're able to take those contracts and utilize them to immediately pivot and provide funding locally. So that has been why we've, again, fallen backwards into humanitarian assistance many times over. And when I reflect on what the US government could be doing or needs to be thinking about doing in this brave new world we're all in, it's three very similar capabilities, operational capabilities that the US government or any government needs to have. I'll frame them slightly differently, though. The first is presence. No government can provide support in a crisis effectively and efficiently if they don't already have some sort of presence on the ground.
We are an American AI and robotics company. We design and manufacture and operate drones, autonomous drones, in 5 countries in Africa, in partnership with the governments. And so these governments adopted and procured us, and they have been paying us in some places for almost a decade to embed in their public health system and to deliver their blood, medicines, and vaccines for them. Some interesting context, you might have seen the news, we just closed a $150 million award with the State Department. It's a first of its kind deal, the first grant that they've made under this new administration. And the context behind that is when USAID shut down in January, for the most part, the governments where we work gave us their program drugs. We had been delivering their essential medicines, blood, and vaccines. And a parallel contractor, USAID contractor-operated supply chain was delivering everything else. They just moved that over to their own public health system, and frankly, things got better. Access improved, stockouts improved, the reliability of the supply system improved, treatment rates improved. And so the crisis averted, healthcare continued, people moved on. And then I think these governments needed to look at, okay, in a post-aid world, what are we going to put our own money in to build robust systems that work? And they decided that Zipline is one of those top things that they need to invest in to have a cornerstone in their health system that's going to ensure that supply is always there. Every single community has access to a world-class pharmacy, no matter how small, how remote, how dinky the clinic. And so the State Department is basically paying for these countries to get Zipline at scale if they are willing to pay to operate it at scale. I think it's really important when we're talking about humanitarian assistance to differentiate between contexts. There are failed states. I used to work for Doctors Without Borders in South Sudan, and I operated a hospital there where, there was no government to do the job. And if we weren't there, then all the women delivering babies, all of the toddlers who fall into cooking fires in the kitchen with their moms, they treatment. And so we were providing an essential life-saving service in a context where the government couldn't do that. But I think we also continue to operate humanitarian aid in stable contexts where there's a perfectly proficient government in place to do it, and we're doing the job for them. And we do that in a way where we're kind of providing basic services in a context where a government could. And we're displacing that responsibility, and we're building an industrial complex around it. And to what end? There's not really an out there. We're not really leaving anything sustainable in its place. And so, a good example is we operate in some humanitarian contexts infested with Boko Haram. Health workers cannot move to provide health care to populations. So where there are no clinics, they can't depend on outreaches to provide health care, to address malnutrition, to immunize children, because people are as interruptible as health logistics, right? Like if you can't move drugs, you also usually can't move health workers. But our system is there, our system is in place. And so whenever there's a flare-up in insecurity and tensions, healthcare continues because you have drones making delivery and you have community health workers stationed in these communities offering healthcare on a routine basis. And so I think it's really about thinking about the context, making sure that in stable contexts, you're equipping governments with what they need to be able to respond to the things they need to respond to long term. And then we can free up the humanitarian actors that belong in humanitarian zones, and they can go spend their time and money and effort in those actual conflict zones. I think that's where it would break down for me.